In this video, we're going to talk about how we actually take our beads and how do we get them onto our loom. And it's very different than what you've done with yarn work in the past. You're not doing an over, under. Beadwork is very different. So first things first, your name should be on your loom. I would highly suggest that you put your name towards the bottom. You're going to start your beadwork at the top. And so your beads probably will not come down this far, so you want to be able to see that this is your loom that you're using for now. You are all each going to also take a little plastic capped piece and put your name on the top and on the side. This is how you will store your beads, your filament for weaving, and also for your needle. So I'm going to open this up. Hopefully, you know, when you go to store things, this is how you're going to store. Obviously, you're going to be collecting the beads that you think you're needing. You're just going to take what you need. You can always come back and get more if you need to. So I'm going to close this and set this aside. One other thing I want to talk about is when you are done cutting your filament, you are going to make sure that this locks. We don't want to keep it unwound so it doesn't get tangled. So this little slot here, we're going to place this through the slot, and actually maybe I'll do it this way so that you can see it. We're going to bring this up through that slot right there, and then we're going to wrap around. There's like a little knob there. We're going to wrap around that, and that'll help keep the thread from unwinding and keep it nice and safe. So I'm opening up my little container. I'm going to take out my filament. I'm going to find my needle and take my needle out. And actually I might have to take my needle out when I take my beads out. I'm going to suggest you use a plain white piece of paper to place your beads on. And the reason I'm going to suggest that, one, they're really tiny, you don't want to lose them, and they're going to be probably quite a bit of a pain to clean up off the table. But when you're done, you can take your paper, you can fold your paper, and you can pour your beads back in for storage. So for right now, the other thing you could do is you could put your beads in your cap. That's another, actually, that might actually be a better idea. And then you could just dump them in from there. That actually might work better. So see, we learn things along the way. Next thing you have to do is get your needle and the line. Now you'll notice that the line that I'm using for weaving is actually the white line, not the green. So I'm going to take the end of the fishing line. I've cut this about a little bit longer than 3 feet, so a little bit longer than the yardstick. So if you need the yardstick to do that again, you should grab that. I'm putting this through, and I'm going to kind of create a long tail. You're weaving, this stuff moves around a lot, so I'm going to kind of have a long tail here. So it's overlapping quite a bit. In fact, I could bring it back even further. And then I am going to leave about a 9-inch tail, or a 6 to 9 inch tail, something like that, about that length. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom in here so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go from the left-hand side. I'm going to go left to right underneath. And I need my pattern with me. So you'll notice that I have 7, we talked about this before, 7 going across. Now I chose not to do gray, I chose to do black instead. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to pick up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm then going to let these come down on the thread. So I'm going to pull that through, come down on the thread. Now the first one is always the trickiest one. The first one's always the trickiest. So you want your beads to go in the middle, in between each thread. And I might have to shift, just using my needle here, I might just have to shift some of these strands over so that they're a little bit closer together. I might have made mine a little too far apart, which might make it a little bit more difficult. Once you get that first strand in, then the rest kind of go in pretty easy. So I'm going to go in here, and you'll notice that I am putting, so there's 1, 2, 3. I'll start this end first, maybe that would be better. Like I said, this is the most difficult part, just getting that first one started. And you want to have a bead in between each strand. So as I look at that, I'm seeing a bead in between each strand. I'm going to pull this all the way through until I have a 6 to 9 inch, and then I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to, using my finger, keeping my finger there, I'm going to place my needle, and I'm going to thread my needle above. So I'm pushing the beads up inside, and I'm putting my needle through the bead on top of these lines, not underneath, on top. And then I'm going to pull all the way through. Okay, so you see that I have my tail here. I have my tail on this side, and then I have my beads, and I'm going to push those up. I am then going to go back underneath, go back to the left. I'm going to choose 7 more beads of that same color, because that's my pattern. So I have a couple rows of beads, and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to bring those back down through. It's always important to remember that you have to be coming underneath your loom from the left-hand side. So there's my thread is going underneath. Now that I have my first one started, these should pop up into place much easier. That first one is always the hard one to do. So now that's in there. And again, I'm pushing up. I'm going to put my needle through all of my beads above my warp thread. So my weft thread is going through, and I'm going to pull this out. And then push this up to tighten this. Okay. Now, because I want to show you the next step, I'm not going to add another row. I don't want this video to go forever, so I'm not going to do the extra 2 that I talked about earlier. But this is where I start to change. So now I'm going to pick up 3 black beads, then I'm going to pick up a yellow bead and 3 more black beads. So this is the start of my flower. And so let's see, 1, 2, 3 black beads, a yellow bead, and 3 more black beads. Here's the start of my flower. I'm going to push this all the way down till I get to the end. Bring this in, push that up, and then bring my needle through the top and through. Making sure that you pull, be careful you don't wrap around that bolt and the nut on the end there, which is what I just did. So you want to pull that nice and tight. And so now I would just continue my pattern. So my next row, if I look over here, my next row is going to be, which you can't even see, my next row is going to be the 2 black beads, 3 yellow beads, and then 2 black beads. So that is how you are going to weave. Just remember, you're starting underneath from the left-hand side to the right. Pick up the colors that you need, and you always read from left to right, because you're going from left to right, and then you're going to go ahead and add. I'm going to continue to weave this, and so that you can see the bracelet when it is done. So that's how you go ahead and bead your bracelet. Have any questions? Feel free to come on up and see me.